Some choices, you know right away the consequences, but others sometimes linger or are faintly growing in the background until when it rears its ugly head, even years later, you kind of think to yourself, when did this all begin? In 1989, that happened to the Denver Broncos. It was a small decision, a tiny ember that grew into a blaze big enough to burn a Super Bowl dream. Now, the offseason is supposed to be quiet, a lull, especially for kickers and special teams. There shouldn't be any headlines or drama, no riots in the streets, but this offseason was different. See, Denver had their kicker, Rich Karlis. He was barefoot and battle tested. He had 7 seasons with the team, 7 seasons of clutch performances. This was the man who tied the game at the end of the drive and then kicked them into the Super Bowl with a field goal in overtime. He was part of Broncos lore. But he also carried a salary that the front office didn't want to carry with him. So Dan Reeves lit a fuse. He brought in competition. First, Raphael Septien, an old Dallas connection. And then David Treadwell, a practice squad player who never even tasted the pressure of a regular season kick. Now, on paper, that seems like a simple three-man duel. But obviously, paper doesn't tell you the tension that's building or the stories behind it. Because this story was about to ignite. You see, Septien wasn't just a leg. He carried baggage, dark, heavy, unforgivable baggage. A guilty plea for a sexual assault of a child. And that decision to bring him in felt less like, I don't know, competition and more like a moral earthquake. Because Rich Karlis wasn't just a kicker. He was a champion for abused women and children. In fact, he ran a charity to help those abused. So putting these two together in the same locker room was like starting a fire next to a powder keg. Rich Karlis spoke out, fans started to protest, and the media swarmed, obviously. This simple, quiet competition now became a big scandal in Denver. So I don't know what happens behind closed doors, but you can imagine Dan Reeves is looking at the headlines, looking at the drama, feeling this storm gathering around his team, and he decides to take the easy route. Just cut them both. Go with the untested kid, David Treadwell. Now, that at first looks like a brilliant decision. He nails 82% of his kicks, fourth best in the league, goes to a Pro Bowl. But unfortunately, this is not a feel-good story. It's not a Cinderella story. Because the bill for that 1989 decision wouldn't come due until 1991. And that year, the Broncos were loaded, a true Super Bowl contender. They had a top 3 defense led by Simon Fletcher, who was a one-man demolition crew that year. Carl Mecklenburg, Steve Atwater, a host of great defenders. And they had an offense led by John Elway, still in his prime, and Gaston Green, who was running like that first round weapon that he was drafted to be. They finished 12-4, which is a strong record, but it should have been stronger, and it needed to be stronger. Week 11, Broncos versus Raiders. It's one of those knife-edge games where every point matters. Treadwell misses an extra point. And then, with victory on his foot, he misses the walk-off. Raiders 17, Broncos 16. 2 weeks later in Seattle, he misses another field goal. Broncos lose by 3. And the Bills finish one game ahead of the Broncos. Say goodbye to home field advantage. But the cruelest chapter was yet to come in the cold of Buffalo. AFC Championship, Broncos versus Bills. It's one of those defensive wars where every point is as valuable as oxygen. Bills never score an offensive touchdown. They get 10 points, 7 from a pick six, 3 from a field goal. The Broncos were the only ones to score an offensive touchdown, but they lost 10-7. And David Treadwell, he missed 3 field goals, including a makeable 37-yarder. That's 9 points abandoned on the turf. 9 points that would have punched their ticket to the Super Bowl. 9 points that would have literally rewritten the legacy of an era. 9 points that you can trace back to a decision in an offseason 2 years earlier over a kicker controversy nobody thought would matter.